the pond. He is DJ Schweitzer. I am Jeremy Lance. It's Thanksgiving week. DJ, what are you thankful for? Are you thankful for anything?
I'm thankful that we're getting to talk about soccer, right? And the rising pandemic, the never-ending rising pandemic.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, right. It's back again. The coronavirus is bringing sexy back.
Pandemic 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, maybe any of those things. Regardless, we still are getting loads of soccer. I'm pretty thankful for that. What are you thankful for, Jeremy?
This bourbon in my glass and the fact that I have nowhere to be between now and Monday.
It's mostly comforting.
Yeah, that's good.
It'll keep you warm, if nothing else, as the temperatures dip here in Cincinnati.
That's right. We get the Premier League's back. We got MLS playoffs. We do from a soccer front have things to be thankful of. There is a lot of stuff to watch. We lamented the previous weekend where there was literally no soccer. There was nothing domestic. There was a handful of just whatever international matches on Saturdays and Sundays, but there was just nothing else. There was nothing else to watch.
And this week, and it came back with a vengeance. And
we got it all.
Smacked us right back in the face, and we got a action-packed Premier League weekend where we basically saw a true title race start to open up, and it's a multifaceted one, and we'll talk plenty about that. Obviously, MLS playoffs have kicked off since we last spoke, and they have been fantastic.
Yeah, really good. So, some really good, very entertaining. Some of the reasons they're entertaining, maybe not very good for the league, but very good for people who like to watch just absolute car fires.
It would be great, and maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here a minute, but it'd be great for the league to just embrace its ridiculousness in some respects and be like, that's who we are. Like this, you just never know what's going to happen in MLS. But for a league that's repeatedly claimed, we want to be the best league in the world in 10 to 15 years, even though that 10 to 15 years is a continuously moving target.
Right.
It's probably not the best look.
But a look nonetheless, and a look that was at least very interesting to watch. You mentioned it about the title race, but I guess we do have to talk about the fantasy race first. Is there a fantasy race?
If we must. It was a race for some people, and for others, not so much. You fell one place to 76th, so not a giant fall.
I had my big boy month of October there, where I was just a star, and now it's crashing back to earth.
Slowly but surely inching your way. I had a good weekend. I climbed 14 places to 26th, so a bit of a better one on my end. Second week in a row for Zach Horowitz's Team Horowitz at the top of the table. There is your fantasy update. Let's get into the real stuff, and let's start with that title race that we talked about at the top of the hour. I think for me right now, it's a weird spot. We're going to talk about this, I'm sure, more, but Spurs being at the top of the table, for not just hey, until tomorrow's games unfold, or a game later today
of the season.
Yeah. We actually get to transpire an entire week at the top of the table, which is a very, very odd feeling for me as a Tottenham fan. It's been a long time. I think 2014 was the last time we sat on top, and in pandemic years, that's freaking 20 decades ago.
Yeah, it has been a while since Spurs has been in this position, right? Where you guys have been the top dog for an actual moment.
Yeah, and this is what Levy went out and got a Jose Mourinho for. The reason we went out and dumped arguably one of the greatest managers our club has ever had for a guy who's used to sat in the hot seat in Chelsea, has been there at Manchester United, has done it in some of the biggest clubs in Europe, and has found a lot of success, but also caused a lot of turmoil. But he's now got us in this space where we are sitting at the top, competing, and you look at our squad and you kind of go, okay, that is potentially a team that could win a title. Like I don't think there's ever been a point in my like Spurs supporting history where I think I could say that. And it's wild because if we rewind back to the beginning of the season and listen to what I was talking about, my optimism was nowhere near this high. And obviously this is going to be like an ebb and flow thing, but I just the optimism is flowing. You can feel it just pulsating throughout the fan base. And after the result that we had at the weekend, it feels even more realistic of a thing.
You guys get a good win over a Manchester City side that yikes.
I mean, to say the least, they currently find themselves in 13th place in the table, which is a very unfamiliar place for recent times, Manchester City. If you've
Yeah,
been following the Premier League for a while, that's not that unusual a place to find them. But
but it has been over a decade since they've had this bad of a start to the Premier League.
yeah, I mean, it's been that type of a positive decade for them. Obviously, they've won a couple league titles in that span. But I also like, you pose this question in our running order: can City climb back into the title race? The more I thought about it, is like, or rather, are they even in it any longer? And yeah, 13th place sounds terrible, but it's only 8 points off the top of the table. And
Yeah, it's only 8 points, but why have they gotten themselves to this position as it is? And one of the questions I remember saying out loud on this podcast at the beginning of the season was, do they have enough attacking options, especially at striker, to get the job done? Is Aguero still the guy? And that's kind of one of the things that's shown its head. It's like, yeah, Aguero and Jesus aren't going to cut it at the moment for trying to be that team that's going to just mow people down like they had in the past.
yeah, I mean, they've definitely seen a bit of a decline. I don't think it's odd at all that David Silva's disappearance from the squad has had a noticeable impact in their attack. His creativity, his ability to create space for his teammates, cutting inside, and really opening up play is something they just don't have anyone who's replicating outside of maybe Mahrez at the moment, who can really run at those defenders and create those type of opportunities. But the like you mentioned, Jesus and Aguero, they both have to be firing, and they're both going through these spells where not only are they maybe not in the best of form, Jesus is scoring when he is getting into matches, but they're also alternating like fitness battles, right? And neither one of them can stay fit enough long enough to establish a rhythm where City can then get into a bit of a groove attacking wise. And it's, you look at this team and you see all that they've had at their disposal, all the money they've spent and all the different ways they've spent it. And you think they should be doing better. But then you hear Pep say things like this. This is what he said after the match, after losing 2-0 to Spurs. He says, Spurs broke 2 times in 90 minutes. They had 4 shots and 2 goals. Congratulations. All teams defend deep, except Liverpool and Chelsea, and you have to find a way to avoid it. That's not the big problem right now. It's our fluidity to attack and create more chances. The last sentence is truly like their issue, right? Like that's mostly their issue. But he totally ignores the fact, while denigrating Spurs for sitting deep and everyone else for potentially sitting deep, that his own team, who isn't sitting deep, keeps conceding goals as well.
Yep.
Like that's why they're in this position. So not only is he acknowledging their attacking woes, which are truthful, he's dismissing their actual other issues while saying like, well, you can't play this way to other teams. Like, no, dude, if you can't play the way that you need to get your results, maybe you're the one who's playing the wrong system. I think that's truly a little bit of the deal with Pep right now, right? Like he he just signed up for another 2 years, which is weird for him. He's going to be longer than a normal stint, but he's not producing the results on a level that the squad he's invested in probably should be.
Bringing it back to Spurs, do they have the depth to see this out?
I think so. I think so. You look across their attacking options, and that's usually the area where teams go thin first. It's attacking options and center backs, right? I think center back is the true concern, which is odd for Tottenham. Usually we have like a couple great attackers, but nothing sitting behind them. Now we have, obviously Kane. We've not really seen much of Vinicius up top yet, but he is an actual, striking option up top that we haven't quite tested yet. But then you look in the wide positions, and we have players like Son, Bale, Lucas Moura, Lamela. These are like that's five really good attackers, right? If you lose one or two, you still have three that are at your disposal. And I feel, you also have Lo Celso, who I'm not bringing to the occasion, Bergwijn, right? These are just a lot of quivers in our options that we can actually shoot at people. The back line right now with Toby injured, I think, is where we really are sitting thin. We just don't have many high quality center backs. But listen, if this team can throw all of those attackers at people, it's going to be hard for a lot of teams to keep up with them.
Yeah, no doubt. The other team at 20 points, Liverpool. This was supposed to be the moment that they had some hiccups. This is supposed to be the moment that they, that they felt the strains of not having Virgil van Dijk, that they felt the strains of losing Mo Salah to coronavirus quarantine, and just kind of just the other injuries and issues they're dealing with. This was, and going into this match against Leicester City this weekend, you're like, this could be a moment of their undoing where we really see all of these issues they're dealing with just kind of come to a head. And instead, they didn't miss a beat, and they rocked Leicester City and looked like they could lose a few more players to COVID quarantine and still murder everybody in the league. Like, it was just when you thought you had injured Liverpool enough, they had been knocked back enough to where they weren't going to get back up. Like, it's the villain at the end of the movie just rising right back up, and you're like, oh crap, I didn't do anything to stop him.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities actually between the way Liverpool and Spurs teams are constructed, right? They're very like front end heavy, right? Where there are loads of attacking players who are interchangeable. You can flop them in and out. You can throw different options in different ways. And if you lose a piece or two, you're not completely distraught without them. Whereas if you look where Liverpool are really hurting, it's in the back. They've had all these really key injuries, Virgil van Dijk being this big loss. And they had a couple others as well. And you look at them and go, well, hey, they are a team that's capable when they're full strength of absorbing pressure, of closing out a game and really shutting things down. But if they lose the ability to do that, they're also a team that can just throw everything at you. And you have to then deal with Liverpool running at you time after time after time after time after time. So they have two different modes of being able to play, and it's kind of the same thing with Spurs, right? Yeah, they might be losing some defensive strength right now, but hey, they got past City, who was maybe their biggest attacking threat that they'd had to face so far this season. And now maybe they can just play at teams a little bit more. You look at a side like Chelsea, who they're going to face next. You guys aren't going to sit back, right? So that leaves a game that's probably a little bit more open where you can then attack and don't have to rely on your defenders in a way that you might against a team like City. So it's not entirely surprising that Liverpool are surviving this, especially given the fact that they picked up a guy like Jota who just can come into the squad and run with things.
That was like my next bullet point here. Was like Jota might be the signing of the deadline there. I mean, the way he's come in and just fit right in and added so much, and it's kind of been the right signing at the right moment, right? Like they needed that extra option there when they were kind of losing Salah and all this stuff going on, and he's come in and he is not he has not shrunk under the spotlight.
No, it's almost unfair, right? Like they lose Salah, and they have Jota who can come right in. Firmino has a bit of a bad spell, and they can lean back on Jota. So it's just it's an embarrassment of riches that they have to work with at the moment, and they really showed their stuff against a Leicester side who just couldn't handle those waves of pressure that Liverpool kept throwing at them. And it is fun watching Klopp adapt to this team to these challenges that they're facing and find a new way to remain dominant. And as frustrating it is as anyone else who supports a team that's not Liverpool, it is kind of a marvel to see them just continue to punch and punch and punch despite all their losses.
Third place Chelsea, they're right in it, right behind them. They are playing really well right now. Everything's firing on all cylinders. And the best news about that is they're not even at full strength. You still have Kai Havertz just now coming back from the coronavirus, and they're super gluing Pulisic back together.
I saw pictures of him in training this week. He had a beard.
He has a beard now. He's a grown man.
Do you feel like you're channeling him a little bit and sending him some of your bearded energy?
If I can just send him, like, I don't know, like cells from my hamstring to like get that up, can I do that instead?
Yeah, I'm sure he'd take him.
But listen, Chelsea looks really good. I'm excited. They have a lot of things working for them that they haven't over the past couple seasons. You talk about top-heavy teams, the way they're built. Like Chelsea is also very much that, where they have a bunch of great interchangeable attacking options, and let's just hope that Thiago Silva doesn't screw it up in the back. Luckily, we have an actual keeper now. That's good too. I think the big thing, though, still missing is, like, as good as we've been playing, even as good as, like, a lot of, last season went, this Frank Lampard side is still lacking a marquee victory to its name. It doesn't exist.
But, I mean, do you need marquee victories if you find yourself in the midst of a title race?
I mean, you're gonna have to win some of the big matchups. You don't have to win all of them. I mean, I've always been a big believer in it's gonna come down to not throwing away the points that you should win. It's less about the toss-up matches between the other contenders. But I still think I think from a proving themselves standpoint, this Chelsea side is still lacking a marquee victory.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to face some tests here in the very near future against a number of pretty stiff sides. But I think part of that's because you guys haven't really faced a whole lot of those types of challenges to this point in the season, right? Like, Spurs have kind of had some of that same type of situation to deal with, although they had some earlier on in the year. But both of our sides are getting ready to go through this gauntlet portion of the season. Remember, the holiday period is already crazy in England. It's going to be extra crazy in coronavirus Premier League era. And, you guys looking down the line a little bit, you've got Everton who's coming up, Wolves after that, Arsenal following that. and then you've got City and Leicester right at the turn of the new year, right? So
Yep.
those are going to be a tough stretch to really test you. But this weekend is really going to be your first true, I think, litmus test to the season.
Yeah, it is. I mean, luckily for Chelsea, it's the one during the Frank Lampard era, the one bigger team that we've actually had success against. We haven't really had success against. I mean, in the league, we have not had success against Liverpool. We've not had success against United or City, but we've had success against Spurs.
Yeah, damn it. It'll probably happen again this weekend. Spurs currently, I think, on a 8-match unbeaten run, 6 wins, 2 draws, which is why they find themselves at the top of the table. So this seems like the perfect time to get Spursy and give you guys a bit of a lift into the title hunt as well.
Is Eric Dyer going to leave the game to poop again?
One can only hope.
Let's Leicester City's. We kind of already talked about them and their issues. They're the other team there in that top 4. You also have Southampton, right? Like right on the outside looking in, not far away. So I mean, 3 points away.
We keep saying this. There's no way they can keep. There's not enough. There's not enough in that squad to keep this up.
No, but it'll be fun to watch it while it lasts.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. They continue to play great stuff. I think the bigger issue for them is going to be the issue that Southampton always seem to find themselves in.
Retaining their players.
Holding on, not just the players. I mean, obviously, James Ward-Prowse is someone that everyone's been circling for ages, and he kind of has felt the need to stay, much in the way that you're seeing someone, like Jack Grealish at Aston Villa. I think he's feeling some of that, like, need to stay and prove himself at the club that he came up and through. But like Ralph Hasenhuttl is the other player or the other person I think they're going to be desperate to hold on to as he continues to get them to do really well with the squad they have at their disposal. You have to think the next time a decent sized vacancy opens up somewhere in the Premier League, he's probably going to be on the move that direction.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely possible. It'll be interesting to see how, the Southampton side, it continues the season, and then, do they get their big names picked off? A guy like, we were talking about it today at work. What's his name? Shea Adams, the guy that their goal scorer right now. Like, He seems a guy destined for like a West Ham or Everton like overspend.
Oh yeah, like we'll pay like $40 million for him, but he scores like 4 goals in his opening campaign.
That seems like just an absolute move for them. Let's kind of whip around the rest of the league real quickly. I don't know if there was any other matches not involving those top 4 you wanted to hit on, except for absolutely we need to talk about Arsenal.
Yeah, just real quickly before we get to Arsenal, Everton got back to their winning ways with a kind of enthralling 3-2 win at Craven Cottage. Poor Fulham, they're not as bad as their table position belays, but they just cannot get it together enough to get results.
Let's move to the darling of this year's Premier League, allegedly, which was Leeds. I think that I don't know. I feel like people have already kind of run the course on that one. They go up against Arsenal. It finishes 0-0. Arsenal self-destruct, though, as really Leeds should have won this game. I mean, they had so many close chances right there at the end where they should have put this game away. They didn't. Arsenal, though, self-destruct by Pepe, that big money signing, just going full red mist and headbutting a Leeds player and getting sent off.
Oh man, our buddy Jason Ridge is definitely going to take issue with your description of that event. I will say this much. Describing it as a headbutt is probably a bit harsh. It was more one of those things where you do like I'm going to touch my head to yours and I'm going to push it forward as opposed to like I'm going to strike you with my head.
But in the laws of the game, that that gets chalked up as a headbutt.
100%, right? And that's kind of my point that I was making to Jason is like, look, it doesn't really matter like whether he struck him or whether he did anything. Like the aggressive nature of that is befitting of a card. And
Yeah.
whether or not the guy, fell in a heap after barely getting struck by Pepe's head is kind of indifferent. You just can't do that with your forehead. If you walked up to someone in a bar and you did that to them, they would probably take offense to that, and rightly so.
The bouncer is probably throwing you into the street at this point.
And it's really concerning for Leeds that they didn't take advantage of that situation. They had so many opportunities to really put the Gunners away, and we saw them just continuously fail to do so. It's those type of opportunities that may haunt them come the end of the season if they can't convert some of these chances that they're working for themselves.
And Arsenal find themselves right next to Manchester City. They're in 12th place on 13 points. Again, not too far away, but still, there is a bit of daylight between them and the rest of the league. Manchester United, also a team trying to get themselves out of that realm of the table, helped themselves out a little bit as they just squeaked out, thanks to a Bruno Fernandes penalty. Shockingly, that was given. That never happens for them. They get past West Brom, like just barely got past them.
Yeah, West Brom, who will likely be heading in the downward direction,
right?
Come the end of this campaign.
That's why they wore the Norwich kits, just to honor one of the other yo-yoing teams of English football.
Hey, look, we know you guys went down, but we're just gonna literally steal a template that was for sure destined for you, because Puma just didn't care to do anything different for us.
Like, I guess you guys can have it. I guess that's Wolves 1, Southampton 1. That was a decent match to watch on Monday. Other than that, Burnley got a win. Good for them.
Yeah, I mean, they desperately needed that. That end of the table is going to be pretty interesting, right? There's a fairly diverse group of teams that are not very good. They're not like terrible. Like no one of these teams is truly terrible. You look down that line, Sheffield United might be the only one who you're like, yeah, they're actually bad. And that continues to be so confounding. How well they did to punch above their weight last year, and how hard they've crashed back to earth this season is really, really shocking.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's move stateside as MLS playoffs are going on. They started on Friday. They've been pretty nuts the entire time.
Oh, unbelievable stuff so far.
So far, and we are recording during the Seattle LAFC match. But so far, 4 matches have had to go 120 minutes or beyond.
Most of the time, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And in this circumstance, almost all of those overtime matches proved to be pretty darn interesting. Some of them obviously were more interesting than others. Let's start out the road with our good friends in Columbus. They downed the New York Red Bulls, a team who has been a playoff boogeyman for them over the years, as they get a 3-2 victory. There was a rather nervy end to the match as Brian White pulled back one in the 90th minute and left the crew biting their nails into added time. But they hung on for the win and could potentially find themselves as the number 1 ranked Eastern Conference team heading into MLS Cup if they are lucky. So pretty good draw for them. But no, it's that was like one of the more tame matches, and that was 3-2. Like that's kind of the craziness that we've gotten to experience in this opening round of the playoffs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Also, the Revolution got past Montreal, and then tonight, Philadelphia Union, your Supporter Shield winner, your Captain America Shield winner, goes down in flames as they get beaten at home by Bruce Arena and company. And I think you were the one that called this. Friggin' New England Revolution look like a tough out right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would never, ever in a million years want to face a Bruce Arena team who just started to find their legs at the end of the season. And New England did just that, and they continue to just wreak havoc within the playoff setup. So they go in, they host Montreal, and they trip, Thierry Henry's French contingent up. And then they go into Philadelphia to face that number one seed, and they did the damn job, and they truly made Philadelphia look like a not very good team tonight.
Yeah,
Like that,
yeah.
you would have never known which team was the actual supporter shield holders in that situation. But that supporter shield continues to be a bit of a curse. It is nearly impossible to pull off the season long thing and then repeat that feat in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's almost as if you just kind of spent all your energy doing that, and then you get into the playoffs and you kind of empty at that point. You kind of done what all you can do. The other big story before we get into the match that everyone's talking about is Nashville. They roll a COVID-riddled Inter Miami side on Friday, 3-0. I mean, literally the entire attacking front for Inter Miami was out for this match. So they were beyond toothless, and Nashville roll in that one, and then they go to fake Toronto, otherwise known as, I believe, Hartford, Connecticut,
Yeah.
and played Toronto. This one went all the way to the distance of 120 minutes, and they get one in extra time, and it's Nashville in year one. We just came from USL, and we had to kind of piece together a team, and we're not, able to just spend crazy money, and we're not a location where everybody wants to just run to from Europe. They find themselves 2 rounds deep, essentially, into this play. I mean, it was a play-in game, essentially, on Friday, but find themselves 2 rounds deep in the playoffs.
You tweeted this, and it's such a salient point. But this does nothing but make FC Cincinnati's launch into MLS look atrocious. And my Cincinnati Soccer Talk colleague, Ken, I think he said, or I don't know if it was on Twitter or where he put this, but he was like, this 176-day run-up that Birding always loves to talk about. Hey, we had the shortest timeline into Major League Soccer. No, just let's stop it with that. Like, this club was made to go into Major League Soccer from the minute of its inception. They said at the opening press conference that they were shooting, even though they're going into USL, they literally said, yeah, we're going for Major League Soccer. You can't say that you didn't have enough time when your sights were always set on that goal. Luke Sassano arrived in Cincinnati during the USL era with the eye of becoming a technical director to build towards the Major League Soccer season. They brought in players during that
US 2 MLS signings in while you were
that season. In the season before, with the eye towards that. So you can't say things like we only had a 176-day run-up when you're already making moves to make these types of things happen. Now, of course, the Audi deal didn't happen until after MLS was announced, but those things are mechanically happening in the background well in advance of those types of situations, right? So it's one of those things where you just can't not look at the situation and see what Nashville have done and not look back at Cincinnati and go,
how couldn't you have done that?
Well,
How couldn't you have done anything even remotely like that?
I think that's the better point, right? You don't necessarily have to go 2 rounds deep in your first or even your second year in the league. That's like, this is an incredible achievement. It's worth saying Nashville have really done a pretty incredible thing given it's their first year in the league. But 2, if they fell short of that goal, that wouldn't necessarily be a failure, right? Like if they had merely qualified and gotten knocked out in that first match, that had been a good season for Nashville's, first season in MLS. But that Cincinnati have not qualified for the playoffs, not won a playoff match, not even sniffed the playoff conversation. I think that's the real thing here. They're not even sniffing the territory that Nashville.
We're heading into year 3 of MLS, and a playoff berth still looks to be years away.
4 to 5 windows. No, I think it's 3 to 4 windows now.
That's still multiple seasons.
Yeah. So yeah, your point earlier, I'll give you a retweet for it too, because it's perfectly said. This reflects poorly on the FO for Cincinnati, and it's another mark against them.
Let's talk about marks against a certain organization. Pro.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that need to own this. I feel like, right? Like, Pro totally needs to. If you're not familiar with Pro, they're the professional refereeing organization that handles all of the professional games in the United States. Man, it's bad. And the guy that was out there, I'm sure you got his name written down.
Alan Chapman. You talking about 2019 Ref of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, he's not a bad ref, but man, you would think on a nationally televised game.
Oh, don't worry, it technically wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, I
suppose it was nationally televised on your phone.
Yeah.
Or the Spanish language broadcast was on one of the Spanish cable sports stations.
Yeah, that's what I was watching.
And if you live in Canada, you could watch it on, I'm sure, some sort of channel there. But it was Orlando City hosting NYCFC on Saturday in the playoffs. And all you need to know about the match was the 22-minute penalty kick finish that saw this match just plummet into absolute chaos.
It was truly one of the most memorable playoff games in MLS history for all the wrong reasons, but also all the right reasons. I'm going to go to the grave over how much I love this stuff about Major League Soccer. It is.
Oh, no, I love it. Dude, I've watched it now. I've gone back and watched it twice.
It is literally breathtakingly unprofessional behavior from the referees, from the sporting organizations who didn't know any better. I mean, look, I think you texted before this. I tweeted this out that you had a minute-by-minute rundown.
I have it. I have it right here.
of what transpired. So let's just say this much. Orlando and NYCFC, they end tied 1-1 after regular time. All of the action in this match, by the way, happened in the first 8 minutes of it.
Yes.
Nani had a penalty in the 5th minute. Then Chanel had an equalizer in the 8th. Then we saw Ruan get sent off in the 87th minute, and you're like, oh, damn. Like, if they go to extra time, this is going to be tough for Orlando. Orlando survives that.
Yep.
Then we get to penalties. That's where things get wild.
So we go to penalties. Now, NYCFC missed their first penalty. So they go behind, and it looks like Orlando is in the driver's seat at that point. It goes all the way to the 5th frame, final frame of penalties where Junior Urso goes to take his penalty. It is saved by Pedro Galase. Orlando starts celebrating. Everything's like awesome. Like Oscar Parejas literally runs all the way down the sideline into the tunnel to go celebrate. I mean, he's gone. He has left the pitch. He is in the tunnel, just whooping it up. And then Alan Chapman, grabs the ear, is listening to his VAR guy. By the way, guess who his VAR guy was?
Oh, who?
Guido Gonzalez Jr.
Of course it was.
Running the VAR, gets on the horn with him and says, "Hey, Pedro, his foot came off the line too early. Like this is a retake." Now, here's the first this is crap. And a lot of people have pointed out this as this was the first mistake Chapman made that just spiraled everything. Technically, Chapman goes by the book on this one. Unfortunately for MLS, the book was changed in July. And since the season had already started, MLS was still operating on 2019-2020 ruling on this specific scenario. Where in this case, anytime a goalkeeper is called for doing this, for jumping off the line ahead of time, it's an automatic yellow. The only problem is that Pedro Galase was already on a yellow. So this was a second yellow and a sending off. So you then have him coming off. It's that's just crazy. Orlando is obviously beside themselves. I thought they basically just won the whole thing. And now it's well, it's going to need to be retaken. And then that's where things really get stupid. Orlando, for some reason, just decides, we're going to sub in our backup keeper, Brian Rowe. We're just gonna bring him in because that's clearly allowed in soccer of any form whatsoever, that you can just make substitutions once the PKs have started.
Oh, listen, coaches are going to do whatever they can and whatever they think they can get away with. They're going to attempt it.
But this is the craziest part about it. They basically almost get away with it. The fourth official, Marcos de Oliveira, he allows it. He puts up the substitution on the board. Rowe comes in. He gets on the line. Urso comes up to take the penalty for NYCFC. Everything's about ready to happen. And all of a sudden then, Chapman is back on his earpiece, talking to our boy Guido up in the booth or wherever he's at Howard Webb Central, and chat with him. And I wonder, I'm guessing that VAR room was full of so much panic at that moment because they're watching, and they probably have a little bit more of a sober head because they're not in there. Their adrenaline's not up. They're not on the field. People aren't screaming directly at them, and they're sitting there going what are they doing? What are they? Why is the backup keeper is now in the goal? Is in the goal. Tell him to stop. Tell him to stop. They're gonna let him take it. They finally get him right as Chapman's getting ready to allow this penalty to take place. VAR interjects and is "Hey, dummy, you can't this is not how that works. I'm pretty sure Orlando's out of subs. So just on the basis of just how substitutions work, they're out of them.
Yeah,
they don't have anymore.
They had already made 5 substitutions, so they were completely out of subs. But that wasn't the only infraction.
Right. You can't sub. You can't sub during penalties.
Yeah, it's literally the rule is
whoever's
that
out on the field, you just got to make it work with those people.
Goes for takers as well as goalkeepers, right? So 2 rule violations, totally like butchered there.
Butchered there by the crew. The crew has butchered this, and we'll get back to this because like Howard Webb put out a statement basically apologizing, and they've removed this crew from the rest of the playoffs. But they were like, hey, we back our refs. Ultimately, the right decisions were made. It's like, yeah, ultimately, but like, dude, you had an entire MLS reffing crew at an MLS match in the playoffs, got it in their head that you could sub somebody out in the penalties.
I haven't seen it yet, but this is primed and ready for Pablo Maurer's We'll Be Right Back running
8 of them
series. Oh man, it's perfectly set up for it. The only problem with it is the format isn't really made for how long it takes to show the ineptitude on display here.
Yeah,
so,
well, 22-minute PK. Yeah, I mean, did the break between the goal being saved, the penalty being saved, and the penalty being retaken, it's like 7 or 8 minutes.
Easy.
I mean, there's so much going on in this. Finally, Rodrigo Schlegel for Orlando City puts the gloves on, gets in goal, and now he's got to save this penalty, and then we're back to celebrating. Orlando wins. He makes possibly the worst attempt at being a goalkeeper in the net. Like, dude kicks it to like the right side of the goal. He takes one like half little like bunny hop to the right with his hands just kind of like in front of his face, like, eh. And then he just stops and like, oh, okay. And I didn't even make any real attempt on that one. All right. So, Orlando can still win at this point. All they have to do is Nani has to step up and bury it. He's already converted a penalty, so this shouldn't be an issue. He does, and you saw it happening. You saw it happening when he did it. He just did this very slow, just run up to this kick, and you knew it. You knew like this, he is gonna screw this up, and he does. And Sean Johnson saves it, and NYCFC lives fight another day and lives fight another round. They go into the 6th round, both convert. 7th round, Schlegel, against all odds, saves the penalty kick.
Totally crap penalty, by the way.
Yeah.
Not a very good one.
Not a good one at all. But you probably figured, like, going up against this guy, like, hey, I don't...
whatever, this isn't the bad.
I just need to, like, put it in one direction, and the odds of him getting in there and getting there in time...
I would be way more scared to take a penalty against a non-keeper than I would against an actual keeper. Because at least with an actual keeper, you can make some assumptions about what they might do.
Right.
With a non-keeper...
And if they save it, you're like, well, yeah, that was a keeper. Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like losing in the first round of the FA Cup. Like, the whole thing about the first round of the FA Cup there for Premier League teams is really just don't lose.
Yeah.
Winning is whatever.
It's a game for your reserves to get a run out, like just don't lose it.
So anyways, so this in the 7th frame, Schlegel saves this penalty. But remember, Orlando kicks second in this sequence. New York kicks first, then Orlando. Schlegel starts like celebrating, Orlando's celebrating. That makes sense. You're like, hey, this
big moment.
Backup defender just saved a penalty. Like, this is awesome. What a moment. Alan Chapman got so just caught up in the celebration for it that he just said, hey, full-time whistle, and you can go back. And again, this is like Howard Webb saying they in the end got it right, but like they super got it wrong before they got it right. Like, you can go back, and in the video, you can hear the full, like that, the cadence of that full-time whistle, that like 2, like, bam, 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 like that's the full-time whistle. That blew. Orlando erupts. They go crazy. They're celebrating. They're going, and then all of a sudden again, someone has to inform Alan, 2019 ref of the year, hey bud, Orlando still has to convert their penalty.
It was
They get everybody off the field, and they get that to happen, and Benji Michel puts it in, and like Orlando ends up winning this, but like, holy crap!
So imagine there were fans in the stadium for this, probably more than there should have been, but imagine being in attendance for that and being able to be like, I mean, I got to see, I was one of like 9 people here that got to see that ridiculousness in person. That's MLS history right there.
Yeah.
And like arguably, that's one of those things that I feel like I'm going to remember in like 10 years time. Easy. And I would never probably have remembered Orlando City's first playoff match or playoff victory ever. But man, like it would have been, it turned out, the only reason it all turned out okay is that Orlando didn't get screwed in the situation.
Right.
And ultimately, what I find most annoying about all this, you can have a gripe about everything that followed Orlando's goalkeeper getting sent off, right? Like, you know, whatever you think about that. But Galeese going off is such an annoyance to me. The rule is it's just so stupid. And
there's a reason why it was changed.
Yeah. And that is why it was changed. And now you get a warning instead of the immediate card. But it's just, it's like you the whole story of like you can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just such a bad way to interpret the rule. But what's most annoying about it is the very next save. So, you know, what's his face goes into goal. Schlegel goes into goal. And then the very next time that Sean Johnson from New York City FC comes up to the line, he takes that first step off and does the exact same thing. And literally no one talks about it.
Nope.
Like,
it didn't even look like it got reviewed.
Not only if it did get reviewed, we didn't get to hear about it. It's like I feel like someone from MLS headquarters made the whistle over to the booth and was like, "Hey guys, can we not talk about that particular one? Like, we don't need any more embarrassment here." It was the only reason that it's all okay is because Orlando ended up getting out of it just fine.
Right.
When they should have won.
That was goofy.
Yeah.
Luckily, no one got hurt.
and that's why it's cool now. But if New York City FC had gone through, I would hate that moment. I would feel way different about it than I do now.
But so that was that match. I don't know what else you had playoff wise. I know we talked about Nashville and their big rise through the playoff. New England riding heaters. Columbus looking good. FC Dallas knocking out Portland. That was kind of wild too.
Yeah, our MLS is back champions. Portland will not be doing the MLS double. Yeah. FC Dallas, kind of a cool story for them. They had to sit out the MLS is back tournament because of COVID infection spree that happened within their squad, and they've come back and pipped a big victory over Portland. A little poetic in that respect. The other match out west, Sporting KC won a wild one over San Jose with a 3-3 regular time result, but a 3-0 win in the penalty shootout. It was wild watching both of these games go to penalties after this Orlando incident.
Oh yeah, because you're just waiting like, are these guys gonna cock this up?
Oh, totally. And the referees totally went overboard explaining everything beforehand.
Yeah, I saw that.
The coaches, talked to the goalkeepers, and I can't remember which match it was, but they very clearly caught on audio, like, you will get carded if you step off the line.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yeah.
It was the Portland-Dallas game because it was 7-8 in penalties. And you could tell that both goalkeepers were terrified of the prospects of getting sent off or picking up a card because of it. So,
but that Sporting San Jose game was nuts too. I mean, you had Sporting thinking that they won the match in like the 80th minute or something like that, and then Chris freaking Wondolowski scoring in like the 96th minute off a header to send it into extras.
May he never die. He is going to be back for another MLS season, it seems, which is exciting.
Always exciting.
I'm always down for
Mondo, man.
Mondo.
Dude, I want him to play forever.
May he never come down. And then Minnesota getting their playoff victory under their belts with a 3-0 win over Colorado.
Yeah, they made that
Colorado,
look easy.
yeah, Colorado justice being served, given that they had so many COVID games wiped off of their slate.
They didn't play for like an entire month.
Yeah, I feel good that they are no longer in the playoffs, given that they just basically got a break in the middle of the season. So this MLS playoffs has been nuts. We're currently watching Seattle LAFC. We thought this game was done and dusted with Seattle up 3-0. Now LAFC has scored 2 goals in the last several minutes to make it 3-2.
Let's see if this one stands.
Yeah, we might have to hang on and talk for just a little bit longer to make this match last all the way through to a final result, because it's been a playoffs that has non-stop delivered. Like, we've not had a single match in this entire playoff round go scoreless yet.
Isn't it so good now that they like this move to this single elimination game?
Oh,
it just makes everything better. Just so crazy and awesome. I mean, for the neutral, how do you not love this? If your team's in this and you had a great season and it just goes to dust in 90 minutes, that sucks, but like, whatever.
It's one of those things where, you would love the fairness maybe that a 2-legged affair would provide to you, but this is way better. Like, it makes it way more entertaining. We don't necessarily want the best team to go through every time. Like, in an ideal circumstance, maybe that would be what would happen. But the unpredictability of this MLS playoffs is what's made it so great. And maybe some of these teams being deprived of some of their stars due to COVID has made it a bit of a wild card to make things a bit more interesting. But I'm looking over like just the scores in these opening rounds of games, right? I'm seeing 31 goals scored in the opening round, including the play-in games that were out east.
That's a good amount of that.
That's a crazy amount of goals so far, and I'm all here for it. Like, this has been fantastic stuff.
All right, let's wrap things up. Winners and wankers. DJ, your winner.
No, let's start with wankers.
Oh yeah, we're starting with wankers now.
Yeah, new format.
DJ, your wanker.
Yes, remember, we're starting with downers now, ending on a high note with our winners. I'm giving my wanker this week to New York City FC, the USL, Queensboro FC, anyone who's still standing by David Villa and not really putting him at arm's length right now after the allegations that have come out, not just in The Athletic, which is where we've seen more details spill out in the Pablo Maurer story, but also the earlier tweeted allegations from the former staffer that supposedly suffered them at the hands of David Villa, both verbally and supposedly physically. It's just NYCFC and their pull within this league is sometimes disturbingly strong, and this David Villa situation is bothersome because this is a pretty serious thing in like 2019, 2020 terms these days. And a couple of them have made statements about this. No one's really taken totally serious steps to address it.
So they've investigated it and they have addressed it internally with some new, disciplinary actions and blah, blah, blah. There was 2 staff members that this young lady reported to, and both of them were very unhelpful in the situation. One of them still works there.
Yeah.
One of them is still on the training staff for NYCFC. And again, I'm not saying, he's not someone that has done anything himself bad to her outside of not doing what an authority should do in that situation, which is to step in and stop what was happening and what he was 100% aware of.
Yeah, I mean, her claims were supposedly laughed at,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's just unacceptable stuff in this day and age. Not that it was ever acceptable to begin with, but
Well, no, I mean, in fairness, it kind of was though.
well,
That's how we have the atmospheres we do.
yeah,
Is it kind of was?
yeah. It never should have been acceptable is probably a better way of putting it, but unfortunately, it was and continues to be in certain respects. So I'd love to see stronger action, stronger statements from the USL, from NYCFC, from this new Queensboro FC team. And if they have to divorce themselves of their marquee investor, then so be it. But we can't, as Landon Donovan has so clearly said, we can't keep allowing this within our sport. We just cannot allow it to happen. And by allowing David Villa to be a marquee member of a USL ownership group in New York City, that's just something we can't do.
No, that's no good. Yeah. So this was also my wanker.
Good.
And I'll go ahead with my winner. My winner is Skylar Bal. I think it's Baldio, I believe would be the pronunciation of it. She is the former NYCFC intern who has come forward and has done this article, and it's obviously it's a big step out to go public with these kind of things. And if you read the Pablo Maurer article, it starts by going through the fact that when she initially threw all this stuff out onto Twitter, that she was just getting an avalanche of hateful tweets sent right back at her from the people that just won't see David Villa as anything but a saint.
Well, I mean, there are loads of fans who, across the globe, admire Villa and love him for what he's done for their teams. And I'd love to say this is like an isolated thing where it's just restricted to, these staff members who didn't want to do anything about it, or Villa himself. But it shows just how pervasive this type of problem is in our culture, period, right? Like,
yeah.
Be it overseas, be it here. In NYCFC, their issues aren't just here, right? Like, we've seen the issues and how they've dealt with potential neo-Nazis who take refuge within their supporter base. We've seen them, back very ethically questionable companies from a sponsorship perspective. Their own ownership group is literally soaked in blood. Like it's hard to not see all these things stacked up and go like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah. No, and and to go back to the kind of original part about just the atmosphere of where this kind of abuse takes place. I found myself, it was odd reading that article, reading her telling of different events and just how people reacted to it around her. And as much as I've never personally seen that in all my years kind of behind the scenes in sports and all of the locker rooms and media rooms and tunnels and places I've been over the years in Major League Baseball and in the NFL and in professional tennis and professional soccer. And while I've never seen anything explicit in any of those, just hearing the way she said that it was all everyone responded to her, like, rang so true as to that atmosphere that I could feel and sense all those years being around that stuff.
Yeah. So it's I'd love to say that I've not seen any of it. As a player, as even in college, you think, hey, this is something that's restricted to professional ranks. It's not.
Elitist, rich athletes, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not even elitist rich athletes. It's administrators. It's players speaking towards athletic trainers. It's coaches that speak down to players of opposite genders potentially. It's an abusive culture that people just don't like to recognize within sports, and it's tolerated, particularly amongst those who are the most gifted, and we tend to overlook people's faults because of what they're able to contribute. And David Villa has given so much to this game from a soccer perspective, but he's clearly taken so much from people along the way, at least from one. And you have to imagine that if he was comfortable enough doing that here in New York, he's probably not felt uncomfortable about doing it elsewhere.
Your winner?
My winner.
That was some heavy stuff. Take us out on a high note.
Yeah, my winner is anyone who got to watch the Orlando reffing debacle in person. Like, I'm sorry, that was peak MLS, and you saw people come out of the woodwork to like decry the league and be like, look how bad this is. Like, nah. I said this at the top of the show that I understand why the league doesn't embrace it, but you kind of wish that they did. Like, you kind of wish that they'd just be like, it's wacky wild Major League Soccer, and you never know what's gonna happen. Like,
kind of like how they really just, from a nostalgic standpoint, now like embrace the early years of MLS with ridiculous PK run-ups and all that's like the shootout PKs, and like they kind of embrace that now. It's like, look at the crazy start we had.
Oh, totally. Listen, if you're gonna be ridiculous, you may as be ridiculous for an original reason instead of totally butchering the rules that everyone freaking knows, right? Like, if I could choose between, from a Major League Soccer perspective, looking odd for like our weird thing that we chose to do as opposed to looking incompetent, I would choose being like, hey, we're just weirdos, right? Like that would be an easier pill to swallow. Instead, we're both, and that's what makes Major League Soccer great. And anyone who got to watch that was treated to an experience that they will likely never forget. And that's why I watch soccer games. I watch soccer games for that reason. And we got one. And it may not have been in a typical soccer fashion, but that's totally cool with me.
That works. That works for us. That will do it for our show. Thanksgiving. Go team dark meat. I know your team white meat.
That's right. Well, I think between the two of us, that might cover a whole turkey, right? So
we got it all covered.
We got to figure out how to quarantine split that thing in half.
I'll mail it to you.
Perfect. See it sometime next month.
All right, folks.
It's been fun. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Bye.